What's going on, you guys? Welcome to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And today we're going to be talking about the San Francisco 49ers, the Golden State Warriors, the San Francisco Giants, Oakland A's, and a whole lot more. It's going to be an action-packed show, and I cannot wait to get started and just talk to and see all you guys. But first, we're going to have Sterling Bennett, host of 49ers. I can't even talk. Of 49ers The Access Podcast. He'll be on here to talk about the recent NFL draft. How did the Niners do? How did they grade? George Kittle got his extension. Brock Purdy news. All of that we're going to talk about in the first hour of the show. We're going to be talking Golden State Warriors. I'll be covering why I think they're going to win tonight in Game 4 in Houston. Big game tonight, guys. Big freaking game. I can't wait to watch it. I'm hyped. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. NorCal Sports Report. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to NorCal Sports Report, episode 27 of the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Sterling Bennett will be joining me today talking about the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to be going over their entire draft and kind of grading how they did and what we thought about their entire draft. We'll be talking about George Kittle's contract extension, a little bit of news on Fred Warner, Brock Purdy, Malik Mustafa, all kinds of good stuff here in the first hour as we break down all the news for the San Francisco 49ers. But before we get to any of that, guys, make sure you follow IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of which at IE Sports Radio. Check out IESportsRadio.com for a full list and catalog of all the shows we have to offer here on IE Sports Radio. Check out IE Sports Radio /shop. To check out the merchandise available to help support IE Sports Radio. Also, you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, maybe Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, you'll find IE Sports Radio. And you'll find this show, the NorCal Sports Report. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky, premium brisket beef jerky. The jerky that's on a whole other planet. I'm loving Planet Jerky. You can order it here at planetjerky.net or follow them on Instagram. Why not? At Planet Jerky over on Instagram. We're also brought to you by Vital Apparel. Use promo code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help Vital Apparel in their ongoing mission to bring more awareness to mental health research. It's a great cause. It's a great brand. Check it out. It's Vital Apparel. We're also brought to you by Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. If you want to place an order for these wax seals, which come in handy for weddings, birthdays, any kind of celebration, then head over to IESportsRadio.com /seal the deal wax seals, and you can place an order for these wax seals, or you can simply follow this account over on Instagram at @sealthedeal_wax stamps. And with that being said, you guys, we got an action-packed show. We're ready to rock. Let's get to it right now. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll have Sterling Bennett, host of 49ers Access, to talk about the NFL Draft and the San Francisco 49ers. You're listening to the NorCal Sports Report, episode 27 on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
Minutes past the hour here on the NorCal Sports Report, episode 27 on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And today I am joined by none other than Sterling Bennett, host of 49ers Access Podcast. And you know what, dude, when I was introducing you, I kept thinking of Al's podcast, which was a 49ers Plus podcast. So I was like, blah, blah. So I got all tongue-tied and everything. But man, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. And dude, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing good, but from now on, I want you to introduce me as Sterling Bennett, the podcast host. From now on, right?
Like I'm a Tasmanian devil, dude. Seriously. Yeah. So, Sterling, this past weekend was a big weekend for a lot of 49er fans, 49ers content creators, and of course for the 49ers themselves. It was also a big week, which was the NFL draft. And this was fairly pivotal because for the Niners, they had to hit on a lot of these draft picks because they pretty much jettisoned their entire starting defensive line. They had a lot of holes on defense, some holes on offense as well. And so they had to really capitalize on this to really kind of bolster their team. And so looking at the draft in total, how do you think they did when it comes to this year's NFL draft?
I think they came out pretty well. Obviously, there's some draft picks that some fans and even myself are going to complain about. Nick Martin in round 3 at pick 75, a big one for fans.
I was like, what?
Not addressing the offensive line early, which it seems like they wanted to do, but just didn't get done because the Raiders took back-to-back tackles before pick 100. So there's some complaints to be had, but overall, I think when you walk into the draft knowing that you have to find 3 starting caliber defensive linemen, and that's hard to get in one draft. And it seems like they did that with Collins and Mykel Williams and CJ West. I think if you're simply basing it off of, did they improve the weakest part of their roster? Yeah, they get an A+ in that direction. But like every Niners draft, and this one being one of the more, I don't want to say polarizing, but one of the more hard to sift through, knowing their schematic fits and guys don't fit your scheme, and you have to find the right guy at the right place. And sometimes the board doesn't fall your way. I think San Francisco walked away with like a B draft overall. There's some guys you like, some guys you don't like, some picks you question for sure. But I really love what they did to the defensive line. Surprisingly, they gave Robert Saleh the keys, even though they may only be here for 1 year. So, I mean, it's a good draft that has a lot of question marks, but that can easily go from a B to a B+ to an A+ if all the things click their way in the next 4 or 5 years or so.
Yeah, no, I think so. And for me, they did some things that I was hoping they wouldn't do, but they did anyway. There were certain players that they just said, well, I don't care where they rank. We just know that we want this guy.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the case in a lot of these draft picks later in the draft. And I wouldn't even say earlier. I mean, later, even earlier as well. Their first pick in getting Mykel Williams. Okay. Let's start with that. So the Niners used their number 11 pick to select Mykel Williams out of Georgia. I think looking at this as a whole, I think this was a good pick for the Niners. I like what he does. I like what he can bring to the table in terms of a defensive line. He's a good edge setter. The last time we even had a good edge setter opposite Nick Bosa was, I'm sad to say this, but it was Cleveland Farrell. I thought he was a good, and that was one thing he did really well, because he set the edge to keep the quarterback in the pocket. He was backup though. Yeah. And so that's why I'm kind of like, okay, is this guy a starter? I think he has to be at this point. I think he's strong. He's got long arms. He's 6'5". His arm length is able to kind of give you that stretch to keep the defender away from you, and also good at shedding defenders as well. He's still got a lot to learn, a lot to develop, but this guy has the potential to be something really, really special. And when you look at who was there when they made this draft pick, I mean, your other options were what? Shamar Stewart, who was, again, another guy who has tons of potential, but was a project, right?
Yeah.
Mike Green, who we knew they weren't going to take. There's too many outside problems. Yeah. And, obviously, it was like Derek Harmon. But I think that when you look at the rest of their draft, they made up for not taking Derek Harmon. I think they made up really well. But I like this draft pick in Mykel Williams. At first, I was a little shocked by it, because I fully thought that they're going to go Shamar Stewart. I just did. And then when they went Mykel Williams, I was like, wow, okay. But at the end of the day, I like the draft pick. He's out of the SEC, played for Georgia. Now, Georgia does rotate their position players on defense constantly in and out. So he's not a guy who's out there for multiple consecutive possessions, just every down out there. So that may be something they do here with San Francisco. I'm not sure. But what did you think about the draft pick of Mykel Williams?
To me, it was pretty expected. I didn't think they were going to take Shamar Stewart. I didn't think they were anywhere near in on James Pierce Jr. And I think, one of the recurring themes we saw in this draft class was that they took guys that have really high floors and not the highest ceilings. Now, I think Mykel can grow as a pass rusher. One of the best things I've heard from him was in his post-draft press conference when he got back to San Francisco, met George Kittle, obviously saw John and Kyle and everything. He was asked by, funny enough, my coworker, Jake Hutchinson at 957 The Game, like, what do you need to improve upon? And he bluntly said, my pass rush plan. And it's really hard for some players to just be honest with themselves and honest with the media. Like sometimes they don't want to get, they don't want to let people know what their weaknesses are. And I think for him being honest, like, hey, and I'm sure him being that open shows that they've talked about that behind the scenes with him. Like, hey, Mykel, we love you as a run defender. You have long arms. You can reach ball carriers. You can get to quarterbacks that are mobile out of the pocket. You're super powerful. You can push the pocket around. You can play inside. You can play outside. But if we can focus your plan of attack, your upside is a lot higher than it currently is now.
Yeah.
And just him being honest, being upfront, just being open about it, to me is a good sign. But also, I think what separates him from guys like Mike Green, like James Pierce Jr., and even on day one, like Shamar Stewart, is that he's a 3-down player. And, on first and second down, you can have him play outside, set the edge. Hopefully you have Alfred Collins and CJ West or somebody else on the inside on first and second down to be a good run stopper and run defender. And once you get teams in 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, you can put him inside and have him force the pocket, use that power and push guards and centers around to get to the quarterback even more and create some havoc. So I think the big separators were, at least for myself, and I'm sure from what it sounds like with San Francisco too, is that some guys were 3rd down pass rushers. Some guys were, 1st and 2nd down players only. Mykel is one of the few players that is a 3-down player, hopefully on day one and projects to be going forward. There's a reason why you heard Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talk about Eric Armstead. Now, I think Mykel and Armstead are different in the way they play, but Armstead had no pass rush plan coming out of Oregon. It was all run defense. Mm-hmm. And I think you saw once year 4 hit, you saw a really good, 10.5 sack player once he had, DeForest Buckner and Nick Bosa and company, and Mykel already has Bosa there. And you're hoping that Alfred Collins or even CJ West can become your DeForest Buckner, where when Williams slides inside, he has some guys that can take up double teams for him. And he can use that power and get to the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, even if Mykel Williams is not a huge pass rushing threat in year 1, I think he still will, accumulate sacks because you got Nick Bosa on the side. Now you have a new defensive line. I think this guy has the potential to have a good pass rush, but I think the main thing that they wanted to do was they wanted a big, strong defensive or an edge rusher, defensive end to set the corner, contain the pocket, and to stop the run. And I think that's where they're kind of going with this, because we saw last season they couldn't stop the run. It was so bad. I mean, you and I could have rushed for 100 yards against them, and that's how bad they were, especially late in the season. So we saw Mykel Williams and we said, yeah, that's freaking awesome. Love it. And then they went on to their next pick, which is number 43. Some would say this was a little bit of a stretch, but I like the pick with Alfred Collins. I think this guy is a huge defensive tackle, hard to move, good against the run. Again, they're drafting monsters. These big, tall, long-armed freaks on the defensive line. What did you think about Alfred Collins?
It's a pick that maybe I didn't champion at first because I wanted Darius Alexander, who's a more well-rounded defensive tackle on the interior, which the Giants got him in just an incredible draft for those guys out there in New York. Abdul Carter and Darius Alexander. I mean, wow. But back to Alfred Collins, he's a player that, like Mykel Williams, the pass rush production really isn't there. But you think he's probably going to be a 1st and 2nd down player for you. And I think he has some upside to be a pass rusher, but he has good awareness, batted down 6 passes last year. One of the best, if not the best, run defending defensive tackles in this year's class, 85 PFF run defense grade, 6'6", 332 pounds. And I think a very common theme, which goes back to high floor players, but along those same lines, San Francisco wanted guys to take up space on the interior. Whether it be Mykel, whether it be Alfred Collins, you have 2 guys that, although Mykel's not 6'6", 330 pounds, and Alfred Collins is, they both have 34-plus inch arms. They can tackle guys while they're being blocked still. They can eat up space and make it harder and clog lanes. That's a big thing for San Francisco. Last year, they were getting bullied. And this year, you look at the run defense and you're hoping it projects to be a team that shouldn't be the one getting bullied. They should be the one doing the bullying.
Yes.
I know we, kind of frown upon, back in the 80s and the 90s and sometimes in the early 2000s, putting kids in lockers and throwing them in trash cans. But at the NFL level, you want your defense shoving guards and tackles into lockers and putting centers in trash cans.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Last year's San Francisco was the one getting shoved around. With Jordan Elliott and Evan Anderson and Malik Collins and even Javon Hargrave early before he got hurt. San Francisco, it's really hard when you're a 6'3" guard to go up against a 6'6", 330-pound defensive tackle for the next, 30-plus snaps a game. So they have a defense that, is powerful. They can hopefully wear down guards, wear down centers. So late in the game, it's 4th down. You got to get off the field or got to get a stop. Those guards are just gas. Those centers are gas. And then you have, boom, powerful guy comes in, gets a tackle, gets a sack, or you have the veteran guys behind them, Clea Davis, Sam Aquanu come in and clean things up behind him. So I think it's a great pick. I think San Francisco walked into the draft, like you said, Dre, about, we have to stop the run. And a big thing about stopping the run is, one, you can hopefully limit opposing offenses and what they can do. You can force them into 3rd and longs more consistently. But also when you do that, it creates more punts, get your offense back on the field more. You can score more points, and it eliminates offenses being able to drain the clock against you late in games. And that was a big thing last year for San Francisco. Their defense couldn't get off the field to save their life. They were also blowing leads late all the time. Why? Bad tacklers, bad run defense. That is 2 areas San Francisco improved upon in this year's draft in just their first 2 picks, and they have 9 more guys to go.
Exactly. No, and overall, I like the pick of Alfred Collins. I did think that maybe it was a tad bit early for me. I might have gone a different direction, but nonetheless, I mean, at 6'6" with, almost 35-inch arms, he's a huge guy, well over 300 pounds. This is a monster to try to move, and is likely going to line up next to Nick Bosa. So he's the kind of guy that can, either him or CJ West, and they will draw double teams. And so if not, they're going to double team Nick Bosa, and then you're leaving Alfred Collins, this monster, one-on-one to either get to the running back or get to the quarterback. So that's a big advantage, if you're the 49ers. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about was, there was the draft pick in Nick Martin. Now, I love Nick Martin. I think the guy flies around the field. He has great energy, great tackler. The guy had 140 tackles, I think, last season. Like, when you're looking at someone to replace a guy like Dre Greenlaw, this guy's flying all over the field, and I was always a big fan of him. I was drafting him in mock drafts. I was like, this guy's great. Only 5'11", so he's a little bit on the shorter side, but we've seen the trend in the NFL where it's the linebackers that are getting a little bit smaller, but they want to be faster, and they can get to the running backs. They can go from sideline to sideline. I think this is a guy that can do that for you. My only problem with this draft pick was that I thought it was too soon. This was a draft pick that I think the Niners were like, we want Nick Martin. We want him. But it was like, wait a minute, dude. You could have gotten him probably in the next round. But they were so paranoid that they weren't going to get him that they took him, I felt, a little early. Now, the guy did have a knee injury that he's coming back from, so there's a little bit of that we have to kind of, hope that heals correctly and he could rehab, properly in order to be on the field. Because obviously he'll be competing with D. Winters for that number 2 spot next to Fred Warner. We know that Nick Martin is a huge fan of Fred Warner, so he looks up to him. He's an inspiration for him. Imagine, this is a guy that he even owned a Fred Warner jersey. That's how much he respected Fred Warner, and now he gets to play with him. So there's a lot of good stories around this guy. But again, it just kind of felt like, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And here's why. Look, I loved Darius Alexander, but he went with the first pick of the Giants in round 3. Yeah, I almost had a heart attack. Harold Fannin Jr., he went number 3 in round 3. And I was like, okay, there's another guy. And it was weird because a lot of the guys that I thought the Niners would take later in the draft just started going. We're talking about Harold Fannin. We're talking about Mykel Williams, Isaac, how do you say his last name? Tesla?
Yeah.
Isaac Tesla.
But the Lions traded up for him. So it was like three third-round picks for 1 third-round pick. So they put a lot of draft capital into getting him, which could pay off, could not. Who knows?
And then, there was a trade with Chicago and Buffalo ended up getting Landon Jackson. So you saw a lot of names going off the board
Nick Martin,
quick.
High school teammate, by the way.
Yeah. And so they took Nick Martin. Now, the name I loved, the player, I'm all for it. But I was a little shocked that they took him in the 3rd round. when you got Princely, I can never say his last name. Umanil, I can't even say. I'm going to butcher it. The edge rusher. I thought he would have been good from Mississippi. Jordan Birch was still out there.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at names: Jacob Parrish, Noel Williams, Jamari Caldwell.
Yeah.
I would have thought. Okay, this is just me. I would have thought you could have taken Jamari Caldwell, then taken Nick Martin in the next round, but maybe not.
Yeah, it's funny because this draft pick is one that I think most Niner fans kind of said, all right, what are we doing? Okay, and my first reaction was, this is Robert Saleh's third round running back. This is him reaching for a player that he loves or somebody in that building loves and says, I don't care who else is there. I want to get him in the building. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you can go through the draft process, the tape, the film, the meetings, and just somehow find a way to be infatuated with the player or not. And we all do that. In some cases it was CJ West, who San Francisco got. In some cases it was Vernon Broughton, who the Saints got later in this year's draft. But yeah, this is the one where the consensus, I think this was like the biggest reach, like maybe almost in Niner history with this regime. So that is the head scratching part of like, could you have gotten him later? And I think, you can go look at the other draft picks in this year's class. You can look at, Jordan Watkins, receiver. A lot of the slot potential burners, guys that ran 4.3, 4.2 were off the board. They said, oh crap, if we don't get our guy, we're not getting one at all. And okay, so you can justify it. Okay, you wanted to get your guy. Maybe the board dictated things for you. Where in this case, it felt like San Francisco, and maybe there was some intel they got that said he wasn't going to be there at pick 100, but it just kind of looks like they reached big because they loved him a lot. And you go to the draft board, like you were mentioning, Jalen Noel was there. I'd rather have Jalen Noel than Jordan Watkins. That's just me. I'd rather have Dylan Fairchild than Connor Colby. That's just me. Mm-hmm. I would rather have Jacob Parrish than Upton Stout. That's just me.
Yes.
I think that it was a reach. I think that, and one of the biggest things that has to be clarified here is that it's not an indication as to how good or bad Nick Martin's going to be at the NFL level.
No, not at all.
And I think Nick Martin can play. He's got the speed you want. He can go, from one sideline to the other with the flash. He's a player that has blitzing upside where if you want to run those stunts and free up people. I don't think he starts year one. I don't think he should start year one. The coverage in space is an issue, but even the length he has to kind of clog passing lanes isn't there, but to get off blockers, as a blitzer, to get to the quarterback, to use that speed, get ball carriers. He obviously had like 140 tackles in 2023 before the injury. In that exact same year, he had 60 defensive run stops. So he's a guy that can go around and get tackles, get sacks, limit how far running backs and receivers can get downfield. And he has a really high work ethic, and he was a team captain. So those things matter to San Francisco. This feels more like a character pick, and then hopefully your athletic traits can build upon that, which isn't a bad thing, but those guys you probably get on day 3. I'd rather have Nick Martin than Curtis Rourke in round 7. I'd rather trade up for Nicholas Martin in round 6 or 5. And I think that had San Francisco walked away with, say, Jacob Parrish here, then you fast forward to pick 100, maybe you're talking about moving up a little bit into the draft and maybe getting a tackle. Like, that's the difference of, like, San Francisco clearly believed the draft board was going to fall their way at pick 100, and it didn't. They wanted the tackle. They clearly said, oh, we thought the board was going to fall differently. Oh, where? Because the Raiders took back-to-back offensive linemen right in front of you with Charles Grant and the guy from Texas Tech. So this is one of the more contentious picks amongst fans. I agree with it that it should be. But there's also intel where, San Francisco took that kicker in round 3, and then 4 picks later, so did the Patriots. So maybe there wasn't some intel they got, but the draft board shows you that there was not a linebacker taken after Nick Martin at pick 75 going down the board. Not one more in round 3 at all.
Not one more. That's what I was looking at.
And that's the confusing part of like, okay, like what intel did you have to say? Because the next linebacker didn't go till pick 107 to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And which pick? And which linebacker was that? Was that Chris Paul?
Jack Kaiser.
Jack Kaiser, exactly. Notre Dame.
Yeah, right. So like it wasn't Chris Paul Jr. It wasn't other guys who you interviewed. So it's a confusing pick, but one that could pay dividends down the road. He is healthy, from my understanding, and it felt more like a character pick compared to a play pick. But
Yeah.
if they want to run stunts, blitz the quarterback, and create pressure where they didn't get a pass rusher on the interior, maybe Nick Martin can be that for you in some form or fashion.
I mean, overall, like I said, I like Nick Martin. I thought it was a little bit early because there were some players there I would have rather have drafted.
Yeah.
You get the sense from a lot of these teams that maybe it's just the Niners, but I feel like a lot of other teams had a much better draft strategy than San Francisco. Because I saw teams, like, I'm sorry, but I felt like Seattle, they had a really good draft. They got good players up and down the board, players that had big upsides. And I was like, holy crap, these guys were drafting like madmen. I mean, they even got your boy Gray Zabel. They picked him.
Well,
I was like,
they needed him more than San Francisco did. To be
fair.
fair.
Absolutely. But they had a really good draft. The Chiefs had a really good draft. The Ravens had a really good draft. These are all teams that are constantly the Patriots, Titans. The Giants. The Giants should have had a good draft. I mean, come on. The draft was basically handed to them. Like, here, who do you guys want? Them? Yeah. Okay. If there's two teams that had picks that were just like gimmies almost the entire time, it was the Giants and the Browns. It seemed like the Browns, it seemed like every other pick, it was like the Cleveland Browns select. I was like, oh my God, they have another pick. But what did they go and do? They drafted Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders.
Hey, don't hate on Dylan Gabriel.
I'm not hating on him. I'm a huge Oregon fan. But why would you take two of them? Then you got Joe Flacco who's there. You got Kenny Pickett who's there.
They took two of them.
And then you got Deshaun Watson, who's somehow, some way still in the quarterback room.
To quote Magic Johnson, he not going to be there.
No.
I mean, man.
They're just going to eat his contract and be like, just go away, please. And then your Green Bay Packers, who you cover, they got Savion Williams. Hey, he's got bad hands, but he could be like a Debo Samuel. I thought that was
going to be a running back at the NFL level.
I thought that was a little early as well. I'm just going to put that out there. I was like, oh God, okay. They and then and then the Raiders. So we're talking about round 3.
Yeah,
they took Caleb Rogers, right? Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech, and I thought, okay, hey, that's a good pick. And then the next pick, Charles Grant. I was like, you son of a bitch. God damn you. And then I feel like the Niners maybe were considering Charles Grant. I don't know. But then
when their pick came on their board.
And then when the pick came around, they were like, okay, Upton Stout. A name that I was familiar with, but again, I was like, oh, you went Upton Stout. But I guess, you had other corners going ahead of him. Even Jalen Smith out of USC was gone. So I was like, okay, he's not a bad corner. I like him, man. I think he also played some safety as well.
Yeah, he did.
So I was okay with Upton Stout. But again, when you took Nick Martin over all those guys, I thought, okay, that's a little interesting. And then when you move on to round 4, I thought that, okay, they may have sort of swung and missed in round 3, but they got a good shot in at the end. And then when it came to round 4, I felt like it got a little better when you got CJ West. And to me, that guy didn't have to be there.
No, he didn't. That guy probably should have been gone on day 2.
He should have been gone. I was like, oh my God, he's still there. And what's funny is that when I'm watching the draft, like when I'm doing a mock draft, right? I'm looking at all the players that are still there, and I'm like, oh, he's still there. Oh, that guy's still there. I bet you he'll be there next time around. I can't see the players that are on the board still, so I'm just like, oh God, he's still there.
Going in blind.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm just going in blind. I'm like, oh shit. The guy I wanted, obviously, I really, really wanted him to get was Darius Alexander. That didn't work out. Cam Scatteraboo, he went to the Giants as well. But when you look at CJ West, another guy that I was a big fan of, I like the draft pick. I love how they went another D tackle, which they needed. He's a senior, so he's got a lot of experience. 6'1", 316 pounds. He's got 31.5-inch arms. Not a very long arm guy, but this is a very stout guy who's going to help in your run game and solidifying your defensive line. So to me, I love this pick. I thought it was a great pick for San Francisco. What did you think of CJ West?
Oh, it's a home run. This is a player that shouldn't have been there. And I think if you flipped Nicholas Martin and CJ West, a lot of people would have left problems with the picks, which doesn't justify it in any way, but it's just like, okay, like Nick Martin round 4 isn't that big of a deal, but I think, CJ West is like 3 years younger than Darius Alexander. He's a bowling ball. And I went on Twitter or X right after, and I was like, a lot of you wanted DJ Jones this offseason. Well, you got him for about a quarter of the price and like 4 years younger.
Yeah.
And look, DJ Jones is great, but this is a home run pick for San Francisco. A guy where you talk about, on first and second down, I don't know where he projects to be in the depth chart, but around for defensive tackle who probably is a top 50 player, top 75 player in this year's draft, you probably want that guy to start for you on day one. He may not, but he's a guy that's borderline unmovable. He's so low to the ground, has natural leverage. And honestly, this is my favorite pick of the entire draft for them.
Yes, this was a badass pick. I was like,
he wasn't supposed to be there. You got lucky. It was a luxury pick. Like, oh my God, I can't believe he's still there for you. And I think he's one of the players that, while yes, he can stack and shed against the run and take on double teams and free up space for guys on the interior during those stunts and move guards and centers out of the way to clear up space for Alfred Collins or, Kalia Davis or somebody else who's playing on the interior for them. Maybe Yetur Gross-Matos on stunts or Mykel Williams on stunts. I think he also has a higher pass rushing upside than Alfred Collins, where you were seeing early in mock drafts during the process of like CJ West going higher than Alfred Collins sometimes. So I'm shocked he was there, but I'm insanely happy he was there. Like this is a home run pick. Every Niner fan should be on the mountaintops, just screaming that their elation that they got CJ West in San Francisco.
Awesome content, Sterling Brookings. All right.
I host the podcast earlier today, and my last name is Brookings now, so we're good.
Okay, there we go.
Nick, we love you, though. We love you.
He has officially changed his name. His stage name is Sterling Brookings, or maybe it's the other way around. I'm not sure. This is a guy, too, that he played in all 13 games. He started 10 of those 13 games. He had 42 tackles, 7.5 tackles for losses with 2 sacks.
Yeah.
This guy is a game wrecker, and I love they got him. And yeah, I think his comp would be DJ Jones, and that's exactly what they needed for the no word correction. But no, that's exactly what they needed for their defensive line. I would rather have this defensive line than the one we had last season. Last season ended up becoming just like a patchwork defensive line, which at first, Mykel Collins, I was excited for. Quickly, I was not. So I love what they did. I really love what they did with their defensive line this year.
Last year with the defensive line, not that it was a good unit, but it was a higher floor unit that got decimated by injuries relatively early. Gross-Matos got hurt early. Hargrave got hurt in game 3. And that isn't to say they were going to be great with those guys healthy, but you were asking a lot of guys to play positions more often. Like Mykel Collins really isn't a first or second, or he's just not an early down player. He's that third down interior pass rusher when it's 3rd and 7, when it's 3rd and 8. A guy that, in retrospect, you'd probably want to have on your roster now, knowing your personnel. But that is the one area I am shocked San Francisco really didn't address. Well, I do think CJ West has pass rushing upside on the interior. I'm shocked they didn't try for a Joshua Farmer or an Aeneas Peebles or a Zeke Biggers or guys late in round 7 or 6 and via trade up that and maybe they tried and couldn't get a deal done. I think Green Bay said they were trying to trade back and get draft picks for next year, and this team said no. So it kind of feels like that maybe some teams were kind of stuck in the mud saying we're not moving here. So but we'll never know that. Obviously, San Francisco tried to go up and get Mykel Williams, and Carolina said no because McMillan was there. So it's something that we can theorize and maybe try to say they could have, should have done this, but maybe they couldn't do it. But I'd rather have, Joshua Farmer from Florida State compared to Curtis Rourke in round 7. But
yeah, for me, after this pick of CJ West, I felt like the draft started going in a really weird direction. And I felt like it went in the direction of like, okay, now you're drafting players that are like, your team's already stacked. And now you just drafted players because you're like, I kind of like that guy. You know what? Let's go for it. Fuck it. It's what it felt like. Look, I get why they took Jordan Watkins They wanted a guy that had speed, a burner, like a stretch the field, and I get that, and I wasn't really that upset about that. I mean, obviously, like Joshua Farmer went ahead of him. I think maybe they would have. I don't think they would. At this point, I don't even think they would have taken him. But because I think they've already gotten two defensive tackles. In some of my drafts, I took like 3 defensive tackles because I just wanted more depth there, or I took 2 edge rushers just to give them more rotational depth, and then that way you can kind of weed out the guys you don't really want to hang on to, And that's another reason why they probably kept you to your Gross Matos, because they were like, hey, this is a rotational piece, and plus he's younger than Leonard Floyd. Yeah. They're like, I'd rather pay the younger guy than have the older guy.
You can also play inside too.
Yeah. And so when we go over to, Jordan Watkins, I like the pick as a receiver. We need a receiving help regardless, and I think they saw a lot of the big receivers were gone by then. And most of these drafts, some of those receivers were still around, and in this draft, a lot of them went very early. So I thought, okay, so they made a move. I get it. I like it. We can move on. Shedeur Sanders went in the next round, number 6. That was the big talk. I don't care.
Who cares?
And then I did want to say this at numbers. The 7th pick in the 4th round, number 145, Mykel Williams. Short arm.
My boy.
Where'd
he go?
He went to the Eagles. He went to the Eagles.
He's flying out there with the
He's
little
flying with the little arms. He's like a penguin.
He ain't flying. He's fluttering. He's trying to get up. But look, like, we all kind of laughed at that when I was talking about it with you and Johnny, but like he went to the perfect place, Philadelphia.
Yeah, he did.
Like, man.
So the next pick they took was Jordan James. I like the pick. I think he's a serviceable backup running back. What's that?
People hate this pick.
They hated this pick. I didn't mind it.
I don't know why.
Well, like Jaden Blue was out there, which there was a lot of talk about him. I think it was kind of over-talked.
5 fumbles last year wasn't good.
And that's the thing, is that Jordan James doesn't fumble. And there's one thing that Kyle Shanahan loves about running backs is the guys who don't fumble. Look at what's his face? Elijah Mitchell. Thank you. I was going to say Elijah Moore. I was on it. Elijah Mitchell didn't fumble the ball. Constantly did not fumble the ball. So, but again, you saw Jeffrey Bosa get drafted by the Chiefs, and who had a good draft. And you look at everybody else. The pick after this one, right? So I like Jordan James. Like, hey, that's cool. I'm actually cool with this pick. I like it.
I would have rather had DJ Giddens, but I have no complaints about the pick.
But still, I think, and he came from a big program as well in Oregon. Yeah. That was the thing that I saw a lot, was that the picks they put a lot of value into were players that came from teams that were in like the SEC, that went against bigger competition. That's what they were looking for. And I think that's another reason why they probably didn't take Darius Alexander, because he came from, was it Tulane? And it's a Toledo, a smaller school. They wanted guys who took on big competition. When you look at Oregon,
San Francisco took Samuel Womack out of Toledo a couple of years back, and different players, different years, different teams, different positions, but like that didn't pay off for them. And I think maybe it burned them, maybe it didn't, but you can tell San Francisco, like you're saying, and kind of hinting towards, like they made an effort last year to get older players, day one ready players that are older rookies. And this year it was, we'll take you younger, but we want you playing against, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, USC,
bigger competition,
big dogs in the college football playoffs and stuff. Yeah.
So this is where I got really pissed, because then all of a sudden they took Marcus Siegel out of Kansas State.
Marquise Siegel.
And this is a guy that I knew nothing about. Out of all my mock drafts, this guy was never once on my radar. So I was like, whoa, what? Like, what the hell? But what really pissed me off was this, Sterling. When you look at who was still there, they passed on Jackson Slater. They passed on Miles Frazier. They passed on Chris Paul Jr., Jackson Hawes, and Denzel Burke for this guy. This is where I got pissed. I was like, I'm seeing big time talent here, and you went for Marquise Siegel, a safety that was not even really a guy that stood out in anyone's mock draft. But again, a guy that they felt he fits our culture. I thought, come on, man. You got to be kidding me with this.
It's day 3, and I think what you're getting at is what a lot of fans are hinting towards. And it's what I was kind of upset about. But I do wonder, although I don't think Marquise Siegel is going to be a day 1 player for them, I think he needs some time to get better in coverage. And he has the speed. I think he can grow into that roaming safety that can cover a lot of ground quickly. But the coverage leaves something desired. He's really good near the line of scrimmage, making plays, making tackles. So I think he actually may fight for that nickel spot. I also wouldn't be shocked to see Upton Stout play.
Yeah, I think Upton
safety
Stout
this year. But they also brought in like 4 safeties. The Richie Grant, Jason Pinnock, Siren Neal is there, George Odom's still there.
Yeah, they
Zaire
did.
Brown,
But
Mustafa
that's what I'm
Gutierrez.
saying. It's like when you look at who was still there, Jackson Slater was still there.
Yeah.
Miles Frazier. And you didn't take these guys. And what happened?
Yeah.
Frazier went to the Lions. Chris Paul went to the Rams.
Yeah. Which may feed into the Nick Martin would have slid conversation to late day 3.
Yes.
Yeah,
Look, they took Chris Paul Jr. And then on top of that, there were other linebackers in this round that would have gone ahead of Nick Martin.
Maybe,
so that's where
yes.
maybe, but I think that's what would have happened. And so I was really upset about this. This is where I think the draft started to kind of go in a weird direction.
Well, put that graphic back up for a second, because I think a lot of what you're getting at and a lot of what fans are disliking is because you see teams like the Lions who, they had a hole, but needed offensive linemen and got it. You saw teams like the Eagles who don't need any offensive linemen, still drafting them. And while, yes, San Francisco is in a different place than Philadelphia is, coming off a Super Bowl, a more stacked roster, all that stuff. One of my complaints is that, yes, you want to try to emulate what the Rams did and what the Eagles have done on the defensive line, getting guys on the interior, get to the quarterback, use their power, and just disrupt and force some pressure. And all that's, I think San Francisco aced that part of this draft class, but you flip it. The Rams, although don't have a great offensive line, have put in the draft picks to hopefully get better. They paid certain players to get better. The Bears had a terrible offensive line last year. What'd they do? Went and got Drew Dahlman, went and got Jackson from the Rams, went and made the effort to get better. The Philadelphia Eagles are drafting 2 offensive linemen every year, signing offensive linemen every year, knowing that, yes, you need to have good receivers and a good quarterback, but Jalen Hurts is not that much better, if better, than Brock Purdy at all.
Yeah.
They're in that same tier to me, and they've been to 2 Super Bowls and won one of them in an insane fashion. But the way they won that game was having control of the line of scrimmage on both sides.
Yeah.
San Francisco, I think, now can control one of those, and hopefully to emulate Philadelphia's defense and the Rams' defense. But how do you combat really good defensive line play? Good offensive line play. I get it. You want to emulate what their strategy is on defense, but you got to have guys that can block that really good defensive line. And to do that, you draft and you stash, or you draft day one starters or sign free agents on the offensive line. Which
if they would have got Miles Frazier or Jackson Slater and just said, hey, he's a rotational piece to give us more depth to the offensive line,
back up on day one.
Ecstatic. I'd be like, yes, thank you for addressing that. They did with Connor Colby. The guy didn't have a single penalty against him all year. Hey, get him in there. Let him eat. Overall, though, I thought the draft, I gave it a B- because of the later picks I thought were a little unorganized, and I didn't like what they did.
How did you feel about Curtis Rourke? You can't block for Brock Purdy or Mac Jones. Draft the guy that has 2 torn ACLs and a broken thumb, brother.
He can't move. He's got a good arm, but I just felt it was unnecessary. I was like, we don't really need this. You just signed Mac Jones.
That's a stash pick.
Yeah, but and you still have Tanner Mordecai. I mean, it's just kind of like you didn't need to do this, but whatever. At this point, it doesn't really matter. If you had to grade the draft, what would you grade it?
I think if you just kind of dissect it and you go defensive lines an A+ for me.
A+.
Linebacker with where Nicholas Martin was taken, I'd probably give that pick like a D+. Not because of him, but because of where he was picked. That brings down a whole chunk of grade for me. I think overall I'd give it right around where you're giving it, a B+. There's a lot of guys that can contribute on day one that maybe shouldn't. Marquise Seigel or Siegel if they don't get much from Jair Brown, or Mustafa gets hurt for longer, albeit his mom seems pretty adamant he'll be back pretty soon.
Well, exactly.
And I think B+ is probably, or I don't know if there's like a B.5+. I don't know if that works for you.
A B. It'd be a solid B.
Between where I'm at right now, it's like leaning towards B+, but not quite there.
Yeah, I just felt the second half of the draft got a little out of control, and I felt like they were drafting by committee. Like, what do you guys think? Who do you want?
Yeah.
Fuck it. All right, let's go with that guy. Instead of being like, no, this is what we're gonna do.
Well, that's where a lot of late in the draft, you tell early it was like Saleh, who do you like? Save us. In the draft is where they start pointing towards, okay, you're the scout in Indiana, you're the scout here, like who do you like? Who do you like? And you get down to the board and you're like, that's where the regional scouts come into play, and that's where you have, a lot of guys that are at Senior Bowls, at the Hula Bowl, at the Shrine Bowl, and like go watching Southeast Arkansas, HBCU. You're like, where is that? And they find guys, you go, oh my God, they're going to be a star somewhere. So we'll see if they pay off. I just really don't like Curtis Rourke.
I don't like it.
I like him.
Players.
He's not the pick.
Yeah, I mean, even the last pick, I wasn't a huge fan of. I know that was a player that Brant Boyer really wanted, and they probably just said, fuck it, let's give it to him. But I thought that there could have been some better players taken in the mid to third half or third quarter of the draft, and I think they kind of fumbled on that. So real quick,
it's almost like they're writing a script for a movie, and the beginning gets you hooked, and you're like, this is going to be incredible. And there's that mid-act lull, and you're hoping for a big climax, and you're like, it's kind of okay. Like
if you cover movies like I do on my other channel, this is the equivalent of like a J.J. Abrams movie where it starts out like action-packed, full of like all kinds of crazy shit, and you're like, dude, this is badass. And then he can never end the movie, so at the end you're just kind of like, well, like I said, that's over. So let's move on.
The entire Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, the entire Star Wars trilogy. There you go. Let's move on to our next topic, which is George Kittle gets extended. Now, we know that George Kittle got a contract extension. He's now the highest paid tight end in the league. This is not coming up. I don't know why. Here we go. There it is. He's now the highest paid tight end in the league. He signed a 4-year, $76.4 million contract. And I'm okay with this because George Kittle is a dog. He's a baller. He's a playmaker. And he's a great blocker. He has everything. This is the guy I want for the next 4 years. So I was very happy with this signing.
I don't know how anyone could say I don't like this, which is funny because I had people on my YouTube chat being like, I don't care. How do you not care?
How do you not care?
Look, I get it. A lot of people's focus is like, come call me when they win a Super Bowl, but keeping George Kittle around makes your job winning a Super Bowl easier for you. I get there's injury concerns, although I don't think it's too serious. He's played over 12 games, 14 games the last 4 seasons. He has like 30 touchdowns the last 4 years, had his second best productive season ever since 2018.
Guy's good, man. He's dominant.
He's not slowing down. He'll play to his 36 years old. I think they also have 3 options towards the end of his contract. So there is ways to get out of it, ways to keep him around longer. But we all know San Francisco, inline tight end George Kittle, wide receiver tight end George Kittle. I love that now of this era of players where they've lost a lot of football games, big games mainly, and guys you're seeing leave, Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, Deebo Samuel, guys who you hoped would have gotten Super Bowl championships or guys you hope are going to be lifelong 49ers. It seems like they've narrowed their focus as to making George Kittle and eventually Fred Warner lifelong 49ers. And that to me, albeit you want to win big games no matter what, that to me does matter as well. Joe Staley, Patrick Willis, you wish Frank Gore could be in that group, but he's not. And that was painful to watch him leave, albeit there was some contextual reasons as to why he had to go. But I'm very happy that George Kittle will probably end up being the second greatest Niners wide receiver receiving threat of all time behind just Jerry Rice.
Absolutely. We also got news, too, that Malik Mustafa injured his ACL in the final game of the season, and it just now came out, which maybe tells you why they took Marcus Siegel. I still wouldn't have done it because they wanted more depth, but they went and signed all those freaking safeties. Like, one of those guys has to be able to cover until he comes back. But like you said, according to his mom, he was jumping around the other day. He's looking way better. And this is his mom talking. Come on, this is like his biggest supporter, I would imagine. So I think he comes back earlier than they say, which I hope he does. But this was, nonetheless, it was concerning to find out now that he has a torn ACL. It was like, are you joking? Like, why are we now learning about this? It made no sense. Okay, so Sterling's frozen. He's frozen in time because he's so locked up on the Mustafa news that he's like, what the F? Oh, there he is. He's back. He's jumping around like Malik Mustafa.
I'm doing box jumps back here.
Why are we now finding out about Malik Mustafa and his injury?
Well, the thing is, he didn't tear the ACL. I think that's a big reason as to why.
And that's what came out first was that, he tore his ACL. What?
Well, it's funny because Nick Wagner, ESPN, covers the team locally. He had the story of he didn't tear his ACL. He tore the repaired part of it. There wasn't ligament damage. There wasn't further damage to anything else. It was just the part they fixed prior to. But then Schefter was like, no, it's torn. And so everybody ran with the Schefter stuff, but he didn't tear it. He re-injured it, but didn't tear it. So that's why recovery process shouldn't be as big as it usually is for a torn ACL. I think it's a reason as to why at least his mom is saying it's not going to take a whole year to recover. And I think that you're probably going to see him return somewhere around, I don't want to say October. That feels like it's mid-season, but I think around week 3 or 4 can make some sense.
Week 3.
When you don't have an entire training camp, you're not going to have preseason. You got to give some time. You got to give players time to get back up to speed. Not to say it's a good thing, but my mind goes to last season where, or even in previous years, San Francisco, cut DJ Reed. He goes to Seattle and has a great career now. The Jets, but also you have last year Jarrett Kingston, who this team drafted as an offensive lineman, and they cut him because I think they were hoping to either keep one of the cornerbacks or safeties and couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh crap! I think it was actually a wide receiver. They kept Ronnie Bell. And then, cut Jarrett Kingston. We all said, what's going on? Why? Which is still one of the most baffling choices ever. To be fair, Jarrett Kingston played 1 snap last year for Carolina. That said, you'd rather have Jarrett Kingston than say, I don't know, Matt Hennessy or Austin Peasants playing somewhere on your offensive line for you.
Ronnie Bell.
I don't this to me does open a door to where
I don't like Ronnie Bell.
To where maybe you can keep one of your late draft picks. Maybe it is Junior Burgeon, or it is or it is Marquis Siegel, and put Mustafa on the pup list, and maybe keep 2 players that you probably wouldn't have been able to. Obviously, Aiyuk and Mustafa to be healthy and be there day one, but it could open a door for a player that maybe you couldn't take a chance on sticking around for a few extra weeks and maybe staying on your practice squad the entire year.
So let's also talk about one more thing. The Niners made some news yesterday in signing tackle DJ Humphries. Now, this is a signing I actually liked. What?
Singing him.
Oh, sorry. He was singing. We'll change that. We'll get the engineering team on it right now.
That's fine.
But they signed DJ Humphries.
Yeah.
So that was a good move by San Francisco. I like this move. I think it's a better acquisition than trying to get a different type of tackle because it didn't go against them in terms of the compensatory picks. So this is the guy they sign off the street and he's theirs. So I like that, and he does give them more depth. So when you look at the guys that they brought in after the draft, a guy like DJ Humphries, I think that's a good move. And none of it's guaranteed money, so it's great. I think they did a really good job, and I'm a fan of signing DJ Humphries.
Yeah, it's one that I don't know if he's open or going to try to play right tackle, because that seems to be what they want to have a swing tackle. He hasn't played right tackle since 2016, and that's a big concern for me. That doesn't mean he can't. It just means that he hasn't done it in a long time, almost a decade. So I was coming off 2 injuries, a hamstring last year that cost him once he came back from the ACL. So, he's an older player, 32 years old, I believe. But his best years came with Cliff Kingsbury in the NFC West. So maybe there's hope, get him in that West Coast style, that, wide zone offense. He can do things for you as a backup. But also, even if, and I think this may be where they're going, if Humphries can't play right tackle, maybe Burford becomes the left guard right tackle backup, and you have Humphries be your Trent Williams backup. And not to say it isn't the drop off, because it is, but you're getting a higher floored backup left tackle for you, at least.
Absolutely.
That can play in your offense.
Yeah, no, I like this signing. I think it's something that we needed on the team. So I thought good move by John Lynch and the Niners. Obviously, there's more undrafted free agents that they brought in, and I thought those are intriguing as well. And the list keeps on growing. And it was a list initially, and then every day it's another player. There was that kicker they brought in. It looks like he's 45 and drinks beer every day. He's a huge guy. I was just like, fuck.
Sebastian Janikowski 2.0.
Yeah, I was like, are you related? Distant relative? Like, was it Demetrius Knight's related to Gladys Knight and the Pips?
Yes,
like,
Kenny
where did that come from?
Sebastian Janikowski's long lost son.
But
do you think the Brock Purdy contract is impacted by George Kittle's contract?
No, not at all.
Not at all, really?
I really don't, because I think they already figured what they were going to have to pay George Kittle, especially once the tight end for Arizona had signed.
McBride, yeah.
Yeah, McBride. Then they knew, okay, he's going to get this. And I think they've already known what Brock Purdy is going to get. They can make offers around a certain number of dollars that they want to stay around, but at the end of the day, right. I think they know exactly how much it's going to take to get this guy. So they've already budgeted this money. I'm sure a lot of it is going to be signing bonuses, guaranteed money. And so to me, I don't think it impacts him because, again, what we talked about earlier, maybe even been before the show, Fred Warner has 2 more years left on his contract. They don't have to make that, they don't have to get an extension until after this season. And so because of that, if they had Warner and Purdy, then yes, I think so. But this is your next big extension or that you're going to offer for him to sign. After this, you're just signing players to add to the team. So I think they're going to be just fine.
Do you think that, and I've often theorized this on my own channel, that for how long they sign Kittle is how long they want Purdy to be in the building as well? And I think Kittle getting
a full-year extension, I think.
Right.
I think Purdy is going to get somewhere around a 4 to 5 year deal. But I think he's somebody that's going to be here for a long time. But on the short range, I think 4 years is how much time they're willing to give Purdy to figure it out.
Which is why I think that, because like Kittle's extension is not going to kick in until next year, really, right? Mm-hmm. And Purdy's new deal is not going to kick in the next year too. So like they're giving these guys essentially 5-year contracts, right? In like an odd way of putting it. So like to me, Kittle getting a 4-year deal, not a 3-year deal, to me screams Purdy's also getting a 4-year deal, which is probably what you're going to get for 4 years. 55 per year, 53 per year.
Yeah.
Make around, I don't know, 215, whatever that is.
That's like Patrick Peterson yesterday. They were like, would you give him $55 million? No, I wouldn't. And then I go back to week 1, 2 years ago, and he scored 2 touchdowns on Patrick Peterson.
Dude, it's so funny, too, because Peterson was like, the offense has tells. And then Aiyuk mossed him twice.
I know.
It was like, dude, and like...
One was like right in his face, too. He was just like, fuck.
Right. It's like, okay, like the tells were not there. But then, like... It's funny to hear other players that retired or not, Puka Nacua being one of those guys of like, their window closes once they pay him $55 million a year, but not when they pay him 40.
Yeah. I don't care what he has to say. He's an idiot.
It's like, okay, it's like, and I do like Puka, but it's like, I don't think this is why you're not in the contract room. Your agent is.
Exactly.
And it's like, that doesn't make that big of a difference. It's all about guaranteed money.
This is like guys like Jalen Green trying to talk shit about Draymond Green. It's kind of like, bro, you know what you're talking about? The Rockets are down 3-1. I'm sorry, Sterling. They are going down tonight.
Oh, they are. It's over.
And we're about to cover the Warriors in the next segment. But Sterling, I want to thank you for coming on here. Where can everyone find you and all your content?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at 49ers_access. That's the X for Twitter. Plenty of rookie invites being updated every single day on there for your own pleasure. Instagram is 49ers.access, and you can go subscribe to my YouTube channel at 49ers access, and you can find me wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you listen to your shows.
And Sterling is very good at getting his audio up for his podcast. Unlike me, I'm terrible at it. I'll convert it to audio. I'm like, let me go do that. And I just forget. And all of a sudden it's like next week. I'm like, what's the point of uploading last week? It's already old news. I don't know. That's the problem with sports talk. It's like, if you don't get it up in time, it's old news. Nobody cares. Time to move on. Sterling, thanks for coming on here. When we come back, I'll have Andrew Forder, former Cron 4 associate. Big fan of the Warriors. He'll be on here talking about the Golden State Warriors and their playoff competition against the Houston Rockets, who Sterling is a big fan of. That's why he's wearing red.
I'm not. This is a cherry. It's not even a rocket. It's a cherry.
It's a cherry. Guys, we'll be right back. You're listening to NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No. Not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench